And we're here, and it's a cold day here in Northern California. It sounds even a little colder up in Washington, where our next guest and solutionarian is coming in from. But I want to welcome everyone to Solutionaries. We used to do a big studio production back in the day, but now we're using the technology of Zoom to help interview not only people doing amazing work, but solutionaries who are actually implementing their innovative ideas and knowledge and wisdom and technology. So I'm really excited today because I've spoke to her several times on the phone, and I was referred to her for some people here in Northern California that I've been doing stuff with regenerative agriculture and permaculture and stuff. But today I'm happy to have on the show Delores Beyersdorf, correct?
Beyersdorf.
Beyersdorf. We're going to talk about a fascinating subject of biological farming. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a good opportunity to talk to people. And I've been doing organics since I was in my 20s. And when I was introduced to biological farming, I said, oh, we have now taken away all the fluff and we have science. And I am a strong math science person, and I've always been interested in agriculture. It's just in my blood. And I love the fact that you can identify every tiny little thing, the way it is balanced in nature to be healthy. So you don't have guessing, how much calcium do you need? How much of this do you need? Well, the soil seems kind of sticky. So what do I do to amend that? I have compaction. What causes that? I have tons of weeds. Why are those growing? All of those are answered by a soil test. And when you understand what balance is, then you can solve a lot of problems. This past year, aphids were rampant. Oh, that's a lack of boron. Now, how much boron do we need? We only, in the soil test, it's only 1.5 parts per million. But boron activates calcium, and calcium is what controls the weeds. So if you don't understand that little connection, you can't get to step one. All your other trace minerals right on the back of calcium into the plant. So you've got to understand these relationships. And regular soil test companies will run NPK. Well, that tells you nothing, absolutely nothing. We all know we need adequate amounts of nitrogen. We need a form that is not going to damage the earth. And we need it in much smaller amounts than commercial farmers. I mean, they use 300 pounds of ammonium nitrate per acre. And most of it
which is having horrible runoff into our streams and creeks and watersheds. And now we're getting things like climate change and algae blooms. So again, it's use and abuse, probably promoted by a lot of the people that are actually trying to sell you the different amendments just to have better sales. But like you're saying, it doesn't fit really into the science and the biology of what the plant needs.
They leach or evaporate in days. So you've just spent buco dollars for 300 pounds per acre, and in a couple of weeks you don't have anything in the soil. So building up your soil and having soil bacteria that's going to start producing that nitrogen is much more beneficial. But you have to understand your balance. And when we do the soil test, Midwest Labs is what we always work with, because they do a very, very comprehensive test at a very reasonable price, $25. And they tell you all of the nutrients and all of the levels. And it shows P1 and P2, two different forms of phosphate. One is available right now, one is unavailable. And so when you see those two figures, 35 is your minimum, but you want more because nutrients are in a phosphate form to go into the root. So we use soft rock phosphate because it digests slowly over 5 years. So every 4 years you can make an application and you have a slow release. The side benefit of that is that there's calcium bonded with that also. So it's a good way of having slow release calcium in your soils. But if you see P1 at 15 and you see P2 at 100, it tells me there's no microbes to digest. Those two figures should be the same. So if they're just giving us one number for phosphate, they're not telling us what we need to know. So then we go over to potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Those three are in a box. As you move one up or down, it affects the others. And regular NPK tests do not take this into account at all. So one of the big issues with livestock is that people think that manures are mostly nitrogen, but you get a buildup of potassium, and that buildup of potassium throws the calcium out. And when it gets to be between 7 and 15%, not 7, 15 and up, because it should be 7.5, you can have animals dying and see no symptoms. They just drop over dead because you have imbalanced their blood and they can't live anymore. And so with animals, I always tell people they should be applying calcium every year and boron and whatever else is needed. But that's a really, really important thing to understand how those things working together.
Right.
So your calcium ratio is 75%.
And you mentioned a little bit about boron earlier and mites. And I think it's interesting because in California, years ago we had spider mites, but now we're seeing things like russet mites, or they call them potato mites and stuff, and things that just have devastating effects in agriculture. So you're saying through the introduction of boron, it's a natural way to kind of remediate some of those issues with the mites.
Aphids are boron, but the mites are because of the heat, and you're not picking up potassium from the soil. So you want to spray potassium foliar at those times. It will typically be in August when you have all these mites coming in because the plants are stressed. When it stays over 80 degrees all the time, you cannot pick up potassium from the soil. So you have to do a potassium foliar.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. So I'm gonna go over to the computer here for a minute. I know you had mentioned a few companies, and I just want to give people who are watching this a little bit of some solutions and resources that they can check out. I think you can see that now. Now you'd mentioned Midwest Laboratories. Can you articulate a little bit more what they specifically do and how they fit into your process of biological farming?
On the soil test that I recommend is S3C. This is your basic test. You can have tests for all kinds of different things that you have problems with, but S3C is the basic test that will give us the information that we need. And you have, they changed their top. And so there's, I think it's resources where you can click on that and you get a drop down and you get your soil submittal forms right there to your left.
Oh, yeah.
Click that and they will be in alphabetical order, and you want soil submittal forms. So go on down and you see it clear down here at the bottom because it's an S.
Right.
Soil
So question,
sample
so for people, excuse me, so for people who might not have a scientific or understanding of the different aspects of what goes into soil and into successful, biological based agriculture, can you just go down some of the, we talked about nitrogen, potassium, we talked about phosphorus. Can you just share a little bit about what are the most essential things? Because I think what's interesting is we've seen in the last few years, this whole movement, there's actually some films out called Dirt Rich. I think there's another one right now talking a lot about the importance of, the bacteria and the microbes in the soil being an essential part. Typically, people would just dump more and more and more fertilizer and pesticides and things onto a garden. But what's fascinating, people are actually realizing the importance of having the biology of the actual soil, including compost teas and these things kind of working. I know a lot of people work with, start worm farms, but can you kind of just give a very kind of like a lay person's guide to understanding soil and how these elements work as far as the success of farming?
Anybody that gets the soil test can send me the results. They can put my name on the email, the email, I'll get a copy. and we can discuss their personal emails, because each one is different. And sometimes you think it's one thing and it comes up with that soil test to be something totally different. So there is no one size fits all, because we live in a high magnesium area. And several years back, I was contacted by a farmer that has 1,000 or so acres out in Pasco, and they couldn't figure out the problem. He had obviously some calcium deficiencies, but they couldn't figure out how to remedy it. And the problem was his magnesium was 35%, should be 15. And the cost to remedy enough calcium on that was prohibitive. So the solution that we did was to have him run calcium through his drip lines 24/7 during the growing season, which would balance it at the plant without costing him a fortune. So each plot can have its own little problems. And once we do the basic thing, then we have all of the Tanio products for the microbials. We have microbials that eat up all kinds of contaminants. We had a 110-acre farm, and we had 65 acres under cultivation, and a field man came by after we bought it and said, and the guy sprayed out 27 acres so heavily that we would not grow anything for 2 years. And to say that I was irritated is mild. And so I did a test plot where I used the spectrum weekly, because the guy really freaked me out about the contamination. And I had broccoli heads that were 14 to 17 inches across. Wow. I had tons of protection, ears of corn that were 14 inches long with every single kernel filled. And I had never even seen that. And so then we went out the next year and we sprayed the microbes on the field. We waited 6 weeks, sprayed it again, and planted a crop, and had a very good crop. So you can negate these things. If you have a yard and you have animals on it, you want to be doing spectrum probably 3 times during the year, so that you're digesting the manures and the urine and whatnot and keeping that lawn healthy. And same thing with animal pens. The more that you're using these products to digest the urines and whatnot, the healthier it's going to be, and more you're producing oxygen around your house. So people think, well, my lawn is just a lawn, I don't need to do anything with it. But you could produce more oxygen, keep your space healthier. So there's a big benefit no matter what issue you're doing.
Well, it's interesting too, because right now they're talking a lot about carbon sequestration through agriculture. And of course, we know trees play a big part of that, but it's amazing to know, I mean, as a permaculture designer, when we design, gardens, whether they're herb gardens or larger gardens, and how nature self-organizes, and there's a diversity of how these things relate to each other. It's just fascinating to see how more than just producing food or trees as a commodity, that these things actually do play a really essential role in the bigger ecosystem vitality and health than some people might be aware of. So is there things like, if suppose someone has contaminated soil, I know typically some areas can be very alkaline, some areas might be more acidic. Also, in areas here in Northern California, there's been kind of a nefarious legacy of gold mining. And I know there's various things that could be planted for helping to remediate or detoxify the soil. I heard things like, I think they were talking about like hemp and, do you have any ideas or suggestions of things that can help to condition and detoxify soil?
Yeah, the hemp is supposed to help, but then the hemp is not usable. So this is kind of you've got trading one toxic for another. That to me was not really a viable thing. When you have the pH of your soil in the right pH, and this is 6.8 to 7.2 is you're perfect, right? But we're not perfect. We are in the desert, we have alkaline soils, and it doesn't matter that our soils are high alkaline if we have the microbial action, because it makes it at the root the right pH. The problem is when you get a pH down 5.5 and below, which a lot of these blueberry growers want, then you can pick up heavy metals. And so putting more carbon in the soil, some concentrated carbons. We have a product called Carbo-2, fumic acid, several of those heavy carbon products, plus the microbes will make those things unavailable and help your soil. Whether they leach them, whether they tie them up, there would have to be a little more research on it because I haven't really looked into the absolute technicality of it. I just know that when your pH is proper, you can't pick up those heavy metals in the plants. And you have a specific problem there about gold mining and what did they use for extracting it, and what chemical it is. We'd have to do a little research to know exactly what you need to do. But usually high carbon and the microbes will take care of those kind of things.
And how about things like, I've been reading a lot about remediation through the use of things like biochar. There's also a lot happening with our understanding of how mycelium from, specific types of mushrooms and stuff work as far as impacting on the soil and kind of connecting the food soil web. Could you speak a little bit about the benefits or maybe even the negative aspects or how those technologies can be used?
Biochar is a concentrated form of carbon. So of course that works very, very well. And you're looking at the garden section on Tanio. And if you look at the commercial one, we can see some of the products that they have, because they have all different kinds of microbes. And we have some, we want products, different ones, different kinds for different things, seed and soil. Let's see, what do we want? Oh, the compost and stubble digestion. If you want to make a compost pile really take off, that product is fantastic. Look at the soil and seed inoculants.
Wow.
See, we have the bioremediation. They can take nasty crooks, lakes and whatnot and remediate those very, very quickly. So we have soil treatment, microbial seed treatment, keep going down.
And mycorrhizae is used for root development, correct? That helps stimulate.
Yeah. So you have
this take.
The spectrum with a mycorrhizal is one of our most popular because it's very reasonably priced and it has lots of products in it. So Biogenesis is our Cadillac product and it's expensive, but you don't have to water it in. You can spray it on with, they've actually sprayed it on with an airplane. And Bruce was pretty taken back when the farmer told him he did that and it worked. He's going, okay, because the soil microorganism, sprayed it on with an airplane in the desert. Okay, so it works. And the products, they need to have a little carbon with it. I use Pacific Grow Fish. It is a very high quality product with lots of trace minerals, and they use fish, crab, shrimp, and any other shellfish that they come into as part of their product. So it's a really good product, and it's oil based, and we have sandy soils. So in order to build up those sandy soils, this oil, the fish oil, will cling to every particle and start building your soil structure as you're using it. So it's been a really good product. We leased 9 acres for alfalfa a few years back, and it had been destroyed in the 96 flood, and it was nothing but blow sand and gravel. It was pretty awful. And we took it from 1% organic matter to 6 and 12 months with the fish and the microbes. And wow. We got 5 cuttings of alfalfa that year, and the neighbors want to know what in the world we have done. So you
science works.
It does. And if you just understand a few things, it's so easy to do this, but you do have to understand the basics. That's why I like to go over soil tests with everybody individually, is because everybody's going to be a little bit different in their weather and different things. Like you're in California, you're going to have those bugs in August. So understanding that you've got to do your foliar to take care of those insect problems at that period of time. And we all need that. I mean, we had a summer that was over 100 degrees, I think, for 6 weeks. And those are the times where we're going to have extra stress on the plants, so we have to do some foliars. And they have some fantastic foliar fertilizers. And people that want to grow fruit trees in their backyards, if you click on the foliar fertilizers, we have Micro 5000 and PZ
And
1000.
foliar should typically be done not during the daytime, right? Like after sunset, I believe. I've heard that sometimes,
Well, we like
things
it to
could
be, yes, we like it to be under 80 degrees, but there are days when it's still 90 degrees at 8 o'clock at night. So as soon as dusk happens, doesn't matter the temperature, then you can do your foliar because it'll have all night to absorb without the sun rays. Okay.
Got it.
So Micro 5000 is what we start out with. That is your higher phosphorus to get things going. And then you start alternating. And when you get a bud break, you start alternating with the PZ 1000 for the potassium. And if a backyard gardener wants to do that with fruit trees and alternate that during the growing season, and they've already balanced their soil, they can be assured of having a good crop of fruit.
And potassium also helps with what? Plant stability and the ability to kind of like support.
It makes fruit set. If you have tomatoes that are blooming and they're just dropping and you hit them with a little potassium, they'll set fruit immediately.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So that's why this alternation, feeding the plant and getting the bloom set and the production of that works fantastically. And it's so simple. It's a teaspoon to a gallon of water. And go out there and spray your tree every couple of weeks in the cool of the afternoon, evening. And that's about as simple as you can get. And it takes all the work out of it.
So I know this is a basic question, but can you just explain real briefly for people who might be just getting introduced to it? What's the primary function of microbes?
Microbes can digest the nutrients for the plant to use. If you don't have the microbes, they can't. It's like having microbes in our stomach. We can't digest our food if we don't have something in our stomach to digest it for us.
Right. And then through things like mycorrhizal developing a strong network of roots, then the mycorrhizal through the roots, the microbes allow a greater uptake of nutrients, and then the mycorrhizal helps with the establishing of the root network, which also contributes to a more uptake of nutrients, correct?
Exactly. And the other thing that it does, when we do fruit trees, we recommend that you soak them in the mycorrhizal combination for 12 hours. You can do up to 24. Wow. And what this does, it colonizes those roots so that you do not get any disease that can get to those roots. And it makes a colony as that root grows, that grows also on the roots. And when they first introduced it, golly, I don't know how many years, 25 years ago, they really didn't think it would colonize on grass roots. And I was pulling some grass weeds around the base of my fruit tree. And I pulled out this and I'm going, oh, look at this, dreadlocks. This is what it looks like. Right. I was so fascinated. I could not believe I would walk around showing everybody the dreadlocks. It just makes this really thick coating around the roots. And that protects the roots from disease and keeps it keeps the moisture. I had a gentleman who I did his blueberry patch across the river, and he went to Seattle and was gone the day, and his irrigation blew out, and he had 2 or 3 plants exposed for summer heat. And because of the microbes, he just replanted them and they never even wilted. He was pretty impressed.
Wow, that's fascinating. I have a question. This is a personal inquiry. So what I'm understanding now is you have the relationships with Tineo Biologicals, and you also have the soil testing company, which we just talked about, Midwest Labs.
Yes.
And you actually do, so you can help do soil analysis and you kind of do consultations with people. So if they were interested, how do they get in touch with you as far as if they really need more information of how to read these soil tests?
The best way is to call me or text me or my email. Either one of those would be fine. And then we can go from there. And when they do their soil test, on the upper right-hand side will be email a copy to and X the email box and put my name and my email. And when they get done, they will send me a copy as they send the owner a copy, and then we can discuss it on the phone.
Got it. So when they go to Miss Midwest Labs, you're like an affiliate that they can do the test and have it sent to you.
Yes.
And what's your email and phone number, please, just for people to make it easier to find them? And you know, what is a basic fee to have you help read their soil test?
$20.
Wow, fair.
My phone number, 509-591-1516. My email is ldYfarmer@gmail.com.
Great. And I have a personal question too. Just for me, you know, I have a couple of properties and I'm doing a lot of no-till gardening and permaculture. I've also been introducing pollinators, which has been really exciting into the habitat because I'm up in the pine forest and we're not, you know, in an area that the soils, there's a lot of clay in the soil, but also clay, you know, with the right amendments can actually grow good. But I have about 10,000 square feet of raised beds and organic soil. And over the last couple of years, whether brought in from birds or however that happens, I've been getting some of my raised beds infested with Bermuda grass. I'm not sure if you've heard, but it's basically like a 12-inch deep mat of grass that, I mean, even trying to dig it up to remove it and to put new soil in has been just horrendous. I think it's called Bermuda or Brahma grass. Do you know anything?
Bermuda grass. Oh yes, yeah, we're loaded with it here. And when we moved onto this property, it was pretty invasive. And again, aerating your soil and doing the microbes and balancing the calcium makes a big difference. The best way to kill that grass is to till it and leave the roots exposed to the air. The more that you pile things on, I've seen this stuff grow through beds that are 3 foot tall. You know, you could put down mats. I have seen it grow through weed mats where it absolutely separated the layers, and cutting it with a knife. I mean, it was awful. I said, never, ever, ever. I was not here. I hadn't done it. And it was somebody else that did it. And it was in a rose bed, and it raised it up several inches. So I had like 4 inches of nothing but solid wood on the ground. And when we worked up the garden in that area, we brought in a great big Ford tractor with a massive rototiller. We rototilled it until we got all that aerated out, and we killed it off. But it's a mess once that gets under, you know.
Yeah, even getting a rototiller through that stuff. I mean, it's like, I felt like I was on like a miniature golf course or something. It was just impossible to penetrate. But you're saying you do that and then you add amendments to help break it down?
Again, you go back to your soil balance, and
Okay.
you want, because when you have clay soil, you're usually calcium deficient. They have sticky, gummy clay. That's calcium deficient. And so you've got to get that organic matter in there. You've got to get the calcium in. The one thing that most people don't understand about compost is that as you compost, you are losing calcium. I had an acre compost pile when we had that 110 acre farm, because the city of College Place brought me 45 truckloads of leaves. And so I monthly ran a test on it. And in the 3rd month, I lost 15% of my calcium. I practically fainted. I'm going, people think compost is the end to all, you know, problems, and it's not. So if you're not adding back your minerals when you're composting, you are getting more and more deficient. So therefore, you're going to have more weeds and more issues. So test. This is so much better than anything else that you do. And yes, that biodigester will eat up corn stalks.
Wow.
And my husband was cleaning the barn when we had that 110 acres. And I have dairy goats and I have a big barn. And when he took out a couple of tractor loads, I would spray the biodigester over the top of that. And we had, what did we have? 35 acres of asparagus at the time. And I am running the farm. My husband's working off the farm when we have Hispanics, and we really don't really like women to tell them what to do. Anyway, they watched this compost pile that was 17 foot tall percolate and smoke up and compost in 3 weeks. and they all thought I was a witch, and so they never gave me any trouble.
Yeah, the Bruja has spoken.
Well, they were amazed. They'd walk by and go, "Whoa!"
Well,
And
I have to say too, again, on a personal note, it's just fascinating, not only your body of knowledge, but what you're actually doing, kind of analog of getting out there and actually doing the food production and working with the science of it. And that's really what struck me in our first conversation, that you again, the series is called Solutionaries, and you're just someone who's really walking your talk up there on your farm in Washington. And you said you're in the high desert. I mean, when most people think Washington State, they're thinking like the West Coast or the Sound or Seattle area, but you're in the eastern part, close
yes,
to Snake River area.
Snake, Columbia, and the Yakima. Our property is on butts the Yakima, and so this is desert. We have 7 inches of rain a year, and we irrigate out of the Yakima River. And so there's a lot of water in the area, but we are a desert. And so we have to have some kind of irrigation. And that has been a problem the last few years because the contamination coming from farms up from us has been pretty horrid. And I was introduced to a vortex machine, and I had looked at the technology for probably 10 years. But I wasn't happy with the way that they were making them. When they first started out, they were using PVC pipe. I don't think that running anything through PVC pipe is going to make my soil better. And so it's been, I think,
because PVC does leach eventually. I mean, we have a huge issue with microplastics and stuff right now in our water, in our soil, in the ocean.
Absolutely. And I know that if you have a distiller, the heating and the cooling breaks down and you get nickel poisoning. So I really wasn't happy with stainless steel either. And so I was introduced to this gentleman by an old friend of mine. And I asked him all the pertinent questions and he had good answers. And I went, oh, well, sounds like you have the right product. So we installed it on our farm of 8 acres. And in 2 days, my strawberry plants doubled in height. And I had so many strawberries on those plants that you couldn't even count them. Wow. And I was totally amazed at how quickly it turned things around with having the vortex. So you're breaking
so that's kind of like you doing water, like structured water, where it gets reoxygenated
and you're breaking down chemicals into the compounds down into their base things so that they can either evaporate or they're not harmful at that point.
Right.
And so it's been a huge, interesting thing to play with. My goats are so slick and shiny and milking so well, and just everything is so healthy. We just had 3 calves born this week. We have dairy, beef animals, and wow. In an hour they're running around the pasture and leaping and jumping and having a great time. And
Delores, you're living the dream up there.
Well, we raise most everything that we eat, milk, meat, and eggs, and our garden and orchard and whatnot. And to see the difference in everybody's health just because of that. Also, I have weird health problems. I have 117 defective liver genes, and I was oversprayed by a spray plane about 40 years ago. And the doctors had no solutions for me. They just didn't know.
I'm sorry not to interrupt. What do you mean you were sprayed by a spray plane, like a pesticide plane?
Yes. I was hanging out my laundry. They coated me, my laundry, my car, going into an 80-acre field. They broke about 16 laws that day. And I come from a family of pilots, and my husband's a pilot. And so we called the FAA and made a complaint. But that didn't help me. They ran vitamin C IVs on me to keep me alive for a long time. Anyway, when I ran my genetics 7 years ago, I found out that high doses of vitamin D will get the liver to work with my genetic problems. And so I had a cranial therapist that was working on me because the right side of my head down my shoulder was heavily impacted. And I was in pain all the time. And when I got the vortex on the house, he started seeing a difference right away. And he said, "Are you changing anything else?" And I said, "No, just the water." He said, "I see an improvement every time you walk in." And so that was pretty amazing also.
And what's the name? What's the name of the water vortex you were talking about? That seems
presidentwater.com.
Yeah, there's been a lot of fascinating stuff around structured water and spiraling water, because most of the time when we all get it, it's already gone through miles and miles of old corroded metal piping or PVC, and then it's some of it's chlorinated, some of it's fluoride. So by the time we actually get it, especially if we're not using filters, it's pretty toxic.
Yes, it's dead. It has no vitality. It doesn't have an energy value. It doesn't have oxygen to make you better. So drinking water is really not helping when it's dead water. But when you can have water that really goes in there and starts doing things for your body, it makes all the difference in the world.
Right. They said also when it's structured, your body's ability is to actually assimilate it more, where a lot of the water we're not assimilating. And
it's passing by the cell rather than absorbing into it, because the molecule is too large. It's not breaking down. And with this water, we have really hard water in our area. We don't need a water softener for the house anymore. It broke down heavy mineral deposits on the toilet. The glasses come out like they're crystal. It's just beautiful to see what it does for you. And
wow,
the nutrients that you're taking in are more available because it pulls it right into the cell. And
wow, fascinating.
And then in Australia, the farmers down there get their yearly allotment in a pool once a time, and they have to, take out of there. So the one farmer used 50% less after the vortex water. It was so much more doing it for the plant that he didn't need to use his whole water allotment that year.
Wow, that is incredible. Incredible. So I know, God, this is so fascinating. I really appreciate having this time with you, especially doing all that you do up there in Washington State with your husband and the gardens. And I definitely want to keep you in our network, because as we recently set up our Earthstock Foundation as a nonprofit, and we're doing a couple land-based projects. And part of that is to help aggregate solutionaries like yourself that can be different people to help, make us aware of products, but also that we can consult with. So, more than just this interview and adding to the din of so much information in the world, it was really kind of move our connection along more and understand more about your work, so that we can, harvest the benefit of your knowledge, and also to get people more tuned into the importance of biological farming and the science of it, and how they can get educated and have a more successful garden and yield too. And we touched a little bit on water also. At some point, I'd like to talk to you in the future. We every year in March, we do a big World Water Day, which is a big global event around water. And I would love to talk to you more about the water piece. But for now, I really, it's going to take me a while to assimilate everything you've shared, and better yet, this spring, put it into practice. So thank you so much for your time, and thank your husband for allowing us this time just to chat with you and get you out of the garden into the house. And it's really been a pleasure.
Well, it's been good talking to you all, and help you in any way you want.
Thank you so much, Delores. You will hear from me as we get closer to spring, and we're going to put some of your wisdom to work here in our garden. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And that wraps up another Solutionaries here with Earthstock Foundation. I'm Michael DiMartino, and thank you, Delores Beyersdorf, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I got it right. Good.
Yes.
So thanks again, and have a great afternoon.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.